and welcome to Horror Rewind's 100th episode. I'm Kelly Florence.
And I'm Meg Hofdahl.
And this week, for our 100th episode, we're talking about a movie that's very precious to us, The Ring. I can't believe we haven't talked about this movie yet.
I know. I think partly why is we were worried maybe that it's not old enough, but I was technically 18 when this movie came out, so I think that it, I graduated high school that year, so it still counts.
Yeah, and that's a long time ago now. 2009, no offense to you, because I'm older than you, but
You bitch.
I mean, that's what, 17 years ago?
I swear I'm 21.
Oh, dang it. Yeah, you graduated when you were 3.
Yeah. I'm super smart.
Oh, boy. So I remember, just before I get into the facts about the movie, I remember we went to see this movie on opening night together. Were we in Duluth?
I think we were in Duluth because I remember, we were in Duluth and I think we had to drive. Then we drove up to your house after and we were scared. Let's just put it that way.
So this came out, I think, October 18th. And so it was like before Halloween. And then we ended up bringing like a big group of people to it, like around Halloween. And they were not as scared as we were. And we're like, you're idiots.
It's so frustrating when you see a scary movie and people are like, that's not scary. Like your daughter last night. Yeah. We were watching it.
And my 5-year-old's like, aw, she's not scary. She's cute. I was like, be careful. This is a scary part. She's like, that's not scary.
Yeah, she's tough. She's a tough girl. Because when we saw this movie, we had never, I should speak for myself. I had never seen any sort of Japanese horror at that point. So I wasn't familiar with like the hair situation and just sort of the way they tell stories and and then after this movie I went and really delved into Japanese horror, but it really blew my mind. I was terrified.
Yeah, I hadn't seen Japanese horror up until this point either. And this is a remake of Ringu, which came out in 1998, so just a few years later. But what a perfect example. Like somebody might say, oh, well, you have to go back and watch you should have seen the original first. But it opened the door to that world for us.
Yeah, I mean, after this, I remember just like getting really into obviously going back and watching Ringu. And that's why like when people dump on remakes and things like that, I'm like, you guys, like it can really open the door to you experiencing something new. And I remember just going and really getting into all the Asian horror films like Audition and I mean just a bunch of them after this because there's so many good ones and they were really doing some really neat things with horror, particularly Japan, but Korea as well. And just, I don't know, this is a great example of also it was done well and it was such a good movie that, and when it's done well, then it really, is a catalyst to get into these things.
I agree. So some facts. It came out in 2002, like I said. It's 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. It had a budget of $48 million and made $249 million at the box office. And it's directed by Gore Verbinski.
I think that it's so important to note, like, a lot of these movies we end up talking about, like, horror movies are popular. Like, it's a dorky thing to say, but why do I always feel like I'm defending that I love horror, But a lot of people like to go see horror movies and good ones. And especially, particularly with horror movies, I think word of mouth is so important. And I'm sure this film, even though those bozos we took later didn't think it was scary, I think it definitely got good word of mouth.
Something I just thought of when you said that, maybe the reason that we feel like we always have to defend it is because the people who don't like horror are very vocal about it. Mm-hmm. But I have never told somebody like, I can't believe you're going to see a dumb sports movie or something. Like, I don't knock people if they love to go see dramas. Like, but people will always have something to say if you like horror movies. Doesn't it feel like that?
Oh, definitely. And especially because, I have put myself out there, as you have, as like horror is my career. And so when people, and I'll have people, and they'll be very sweet, and they'll say to me, I got your book, but I don't like horror. But I guess I'll try. I never know how to respond to that because it's like, okay, but it's not just about horror. It's about, a woman and going through all these things. And I think there's this idea that horror is not about anything else. Like it's just blood and guts and gore. And there are those really, again, like you said, vocal people who see it that way. And it's a real shame because, well, you know, there was a tweet from Joe Hill, who's one of my favorite writers, horror writers. And he's like, people who write horror and, you know, create horror are people who are creating stories about people who are having like the worst days. And like, it's actually, there's an empathy there, and there's like a sympathy and an empathy from the creator in like taking your character through that you have to write effective horror. So anyway, yeah, I guess I'll feel like I had to defend it, just like I have to like tell people that Mulder and Scully are actually together.
I know. Even like I still feel like no, but look at their lips are touching. That means they're kissing.
Yeah. We feel like we have to make a PowerPoint about it, but oh well. Fuck you if you don't like horror. And you know, I'm assuming nobody's listening to this who doesn't like horror. Or if you don't like something, like this is just a good lesson for all of us. Like you were saying, if you don't like something, you don't have to say you don't like it to people. You can just say, well, good for you.
Yeah, like I'm not going to put out in the world like angry tweets about things that I hate. Like just do you and let other people do them, as long as it's not encroaching on their humanity.
Exactly. If people aren't hurting others or themselves, then let them watch This Is Us.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever you like. Whatever crap you like. No, just kidding. Okay, so one reason I think we really love this movie, besides that it's friggin' scary and amazing, is I didn't realize how many women are in it. 4 women off the bat. There's no man in sight. There's the child who has a couple lines, but it's all female characters. Every doctor, every professional is a female, and anytime they show men, they're kind of doofuses.
Yeah, that was funny. That was not a conscious thing. We definitely did not, you know, realize that at the time we watched it. And I've watched this movie several times over the years, although I haven't watched it in a long time. And again, never made that connection. But watching it last night, it was like, oh wow, like there are a lot of women in this movie, and it really was, every man was kind of put in a bad light. Even the main dude, Martin Henderson, is that his name? Mm-hmm. Is it Henderson? Okay. He has a likability, but he also is sort of a doofus too, you know?
Yeah, and so I did some research because I'm like, this has to be on purpose. Is it purposeful? So first place I looked, is the screenwriter a woman? It's not. We know the director's not a woman. But then I saw that the creator of the Ring franchise, the original in Japan, he said he has purposely done that because he sees women as powerful and he thinks men in comparison are wimps. No, that's not our standpoint, but that's what he said, and why he wanted every female character to be strong. And he said especially the power of mothers and what they'll do in order to protect their children.
Yeah, and that's really cool also because this movie really is about motherhood in a lot of ways. It's we sort of come to understand that Anna Morgan, you know, went through a lot to get pregnant and have a child, and then it didn't work out, to put it mildly. And then we have Rachel, and she's a working mother, and she has this like guilt all the time, and she's like apologizing to her son all the time, and he's really unnaturally mature, which is upsetting to watch. It's sort of sad.
Yeah, like he's had to grow up and take care of himself. Like he's making his own lunch, and he's like, I'm going to school. He calls his mother by her first name. He knows that guy is his dad, but they don't talk. Like, wow.
He puts her clothes out for her to go to the funeral and things like that. So that was kind of upsetting to watch, but at the same time, you see her sort of struggling as a single mother to do her best too, and she has an earnestness, and she has a desire to be a good mother, but still also, you know, do her job. So I think it was sort of a kind of realistic too, you know?
Yeah, and I appreciate the complicated relationship between Rachel and Noah, like this, her ex, or, you know, her son's father, because it's not just like, oh yeah, we're exes and we get along now, or no, we're definitely still in love. It was very complicated.
Yeah, it was. You felt that history between them, and that, you know, you could see how they have chemistry with each other, but then there's also these unsaid things. And so yeah, that was really good. And you know, I always say you got to have these characters that you care about, and they do a good job in this movie. You know, this movie could have so easily been just like a one of those sort of I don't know, throwaway, forgettable type movies, but there's certain aspects of this movie. Well, for instance, it's actually shot beautifully, like the cinematography in this movie, and just the use of colors sometimes. It's just it's a heightened movie, and it stands out as a great horror movie from the last, I want to say decade, but it's more than that.
You know, something I was reading about, and I noticed it too. I wrote it down how the entire tone and like the color saturation is perfect. And then I was reading that Gore Verbinski said he wanted to set it in Seattle because it was probably going to be gloomy. And apparently it did rain every day that they shot, and not on purpose. I mean, they didn't plan for it that way, but it certainly added a lot. The other thing they did is anytime there were shadows, they digitally edited out shadows so that there was absence of light source, which is something I wasn't even aware of. And they also put rings on set decoration, but not so boldly that you would even pick it up. It's all subliminal. Isn't that creepy?
Oh, that's cool. And then they have those few flashes of subliminal things throughout, which of course harkens to the video. This whole concept, and obviously it comes from Ringu, but this whole concept of the video and everything is so cool. And I love, like, obviously I've said all the time, I love like when you've got to look at old crusty books at a library, but just the whole mystery of her figuring out where this video is from and who is the woman in the video. And like, I just love the way the mysteries unravel. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's like old school investigating. So let's go back to the very beginning. I think this first scene with the two friends talking feels really natural and realistic, and talking about this legend, but then the girl has already watched it. She fakes her out, but of course she ends up dead. That whole sequence is so scary, and you keep waiting for a jump scare that never comes, and then they just flash a bunch of stuff at the end and you don't even really know what happened. Oh my God.
Yeah, they the way Verbinski like directs it, it's like with the fridge opening and closing, you're waiting for either the monster or a cat to like jump out or something, because that's how we've been sort of like conditioned. And there are quite a few moments like that, and you're like waiting for the jump scare, like you said. So yeah, it's so scary. And then yeah, we don't know what happens, which is even more terrifying. And then cut to Rachel talking to her sister, the mom of the dead girl, and there's that brilliant cut to the face of Amber Tamlin's dead body, and that is, I mean, top 10 scariest like unexpected moments ever.
I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it. They put in this sound effect and they show her dead corpse and her head falls over and her mouth is still agape, and I want to scream.
It's so terrifying, and you're not expecting, because it's such a quiet conversational moment, and it just comes at you like just a punch to your belly. Not to mention the sort of emotion that comes to it too, thinking about she literally opened the closet to find her daughter looking like that. Oh, like I have chills.
I have goosebumps again. Yeah. So before that scene, that is, like you said, in my top 10 for sure. Before that scene, we meet her son for the first time, and he keeps drawing this girl underground, and we assume he's drawing his dead cousin who's, passed away 3 days prior or something. And then the reveal is that he was drawing them before she died. So he's drawing this girl underground. And then we realize, if you've seen the movie, the reveal again later is that he's actually drawing Samara in the well.
Yeah, which is very disturbing. And, this trope of kids' drawings, we've seen this so many times in movies. I remember talking about it with Children of the Corn. I wonder why that has become such a thing. What I was sort of thinking about when I was watching it is that it's sort of like kids have trouble sort of like talking and explaining their innermost thoughts, and pictures are often like their way of sort of communicating. Not for my kids, because my kids never stop talking, but I've heard that that is the case for other kids. So I'm just curious if your kids have ever drawn something that disturbed you.
Well, I think Vienna draws things all the time that are very revealing. Maybe they're not disturbing, but, it's like, oh, this is how she views the world and what's going on. So, yeah, nothing. I mean, if there was something super creepy, I'd probably be so freaked out.
Like, what if it was like those pictures, like of a little girl in a well or something? She talks to me, mommy.
Oh, my God. Okay, first of all, I love, what is her name now?
Rachel?
Yeah, what's her?
Naomi Watts?
Naomi Watts. I love Naomi Watts, and I think she's a great female lead, but I love her character because, like you said, she's trying her best. She's not perfect, probably in any aspect. I love how she treats her boss. She's like, get out of here. He's like, you're fired. And she's like, no, I'm not. And she just like swats him away. I love her.
Yeah, that's great. And it's not like she's some sort of like cold, hard person or anything like that. It's just that she has this like confidence in her job and what she's doing. And like, even when we first meet her, she's on the phone yelling at somebody. And, there's this concept of like a final girl, and that's not a typical final girl. They're usually not as bristly as that. So I kind of like it.
Yeah, she's not perfect. She's not necessarily likable in every aspect. And that's okay. I love this moment, which I hadn't noticed before this watch, when she goes out onto the deck when Noah's watching the video, and she's looking at the apartment across from her. Every apartment that she looks into has the TV on and tuned to something different. There's a guy who looks like he's in Rear Window because he's with the wheelchair with his leg up. There's a Japanese program on in one room, and there's a mother sneaking out to get her cigarette. It's this view into another world, and I just thought it was nice little touches.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, and I hadn't noticed the guy until this viewing, the Jimmy Stewart Rear Window guy, but obviously the shot is an homage to that. And of course it's really about, the pervasiveness of TV, and like if this video like could exist on cable, then we would all be dead, right? But it's a really cool moment. I agree. I love it. And again, it's those little things that sort of take this movie to the next level.
I can't remember the order of things now, but they're going to investigate. She's got Noah helping her. Aiden, the son, watches the tape. Can you imagine the horror of knowing, like, or believing that your child is going to die in a week now?
No, it would be such a horrible. It was almost, the way she reacts is almost like she watched him die, because she knows, and I mean, she believes this now. She has very much reason to believe that this is real. And the terror of like that she couldn't stop that from happening, and that he went ahead and watched it. Yeah, that's done so well, and it ups the stakes so much more. So that's pretty cool.
There's such nice scenes that make you feel on edge, and nothing crazy is happening. She goes to visit, I think is it Becca, the friend? Or I can't remember the friend's name in the hospital. The cousin's name maybe have been Becca. But anyway, she goes to visit that friend who's now in a psych ward, and you just don't know if something weird is going to happen, and nothing does, but it's already weird enough that it feels really unsettling.
On edge is a really good way to put it, because that is how you feel when you're watching this. And like just little things like there's the ladder, or there's the great wonderful sequence of she's trying to touch that fly and it doesn't work the first time, and the next time the fly actually comes off of the film or of the screen. So there's just these little things where, again, they're so subtle. They're not, no one's like getting slashed up or anything like that, but they're leading you down this path of like, oh no, things are about to get bad. I know they're about to get bad, so that when things do get bad later, you're like primed and ready.
And all of the footage that we see of Samara in the hospital being interviewed and everything, it's like, what's going on? Why can't I see her face clearly?
I know. I mean, that hair, and the way like the long black hair is used when she's in the well later, and that is the first thing you see coming up. And also when she has the dream of the what do you call that? The thing that sticks, that thing that sticks to you, that with the string on it, it's almost hair-like as she's pulling it out. And that's really upsetting. So they use these things to such great effect. I don't know. It's so good.
The video itself, the reflection of Samara walking backwards away from the mirror, and then seeing these horses' dead bodies, and then they end with the well, and we don't see her come out of the well until Ethan's apartment. And it's like, for me, I mean, that's like the most iconic image from this movie, and people show it and redo it all the time now, but it still freaked me the crap out.
Oh, it's very scary. It's very scary. And I think what is done so well too, I was reading somewhere and they were saying like in the top 10 horror movies of all time, like box office wise, 6 of them, I think, or more than half, maybe 6, 7, have creepy little girls in them. And it just makes sense when you think about what scares people, because it's this idea of innocence. And they do such a great job of being like, it's okay because you know what? Her dad was an asshole and her mom was an asshole. And she was a special girl who got, put in a well. It was awful. And so it's going to be fine because now we saved the day and she was innocent. But of course, that's a great twist where it's like, no, she was not okay and she never was nice.
And I remember the first time we saw this movie, like, I didn't know how long the movie was or anything, but I thought it was over. I'm like, oh, that's great. And she's going home. She saved her son. And he's like, you shouldn't have helped her. And it's like, oh my God.
I have chills because it's just like, I mean, it did kind of feel like it was wrapped up in a tight package, because sometimes ghosts just want their bodies to be found. It's just like, that is a concept that we've seen in films before. So I was like, oh, it's wrapped up in a tiny little bow. But also going back to, can you imagine falling down a well like that with a body in it?
Oh my God, no. No. That is so disgusting. And she finds the fingernails.
So she like knows what's going on in there. She knows that her body's in there, so she starts looking for it. Like, oh, it's bad. It's bad. I mean, just being in a well like that anyway, being stuck in there would be so scary. I'm glad we didn't have to like watch her like get rescued out of the well. They kind of went over that.
Yeah. I mean, and it was also, though, then very sweet when she sort of saw, like, she had the connection with Samara and saw what she went through and everything. And she's like, you can rest now. Like, you can be at peace. And, she cradled her dead body. And I thought that was very maternal and loving. And it's probably more than I would do, I'll tell you that.
I would just be screaming like a hyena in there. Like, I would just be hysterical. So yeah, that was very sweet of her.
Oh God, that's terrifying. And then to find out, of course, the ring is the ring of light coming through the well top. Like, everything blew my mind the first time I saw this movie.
I know, and that's the thing too. It plays upon your empathy, because if you're a human being and you're thinking about this poor little thing that gets pushed down a well and lives down there for 7 days with no one coming to help her. And let's be honest, these things have happened. I mean, people have died in these horrible ways, children as well. And so it plays upon that empathy where you're like, oh my gosh. And so you sort of forget that maybe she was sort of evil, and then you decide that her parents are the bad guys, which, I mean, maybe they were in a way too, but maybe we should have more empathy for them. I don't know.
I just think it's so creepy. Oh, that another sequence that creeps me out is that horse gets loose on the ferry and he falls off or jumps off the ferry and then gets sucked under, and like there's just a trail of blood. That's so creepy and weird.
It is so it's really well done. And it's that sort of idea of animals like having a little bit more of like, I don't know, they have a better idea about what's going on than we do.
Like a sixth sense or something.
Yeah, and it's like last night when Olivia, my cat, was looking at something, it was freaking you out because it looked like she was like going after something, and you didn't want to like, because we trust animals. Like if a dog doesn't like a person, like that's a good sign, right? So if a horse is freaking out like that, like maybe there's a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I just read an article last week where a family's house was burning down. This was locally, and their dog woke them up because, the dog knows quicker than the people do. And, if they hear something or they sense something, what's going on?
Like I'm sure we've all been in that situation where we're like alone at night and then your dog starts doing something and you're like, what? I don't like this, but I guess that's why we have these dogs, right?
Oh, I guess. Is that why we keep them around? No, we love our animals. They're just like annoying and breathing into the camera. I mean, the microphone sometimes. So Ethan, Samara comes out of that TV, and Vienna was watching the sequence, and she's not moving right. I mean, it's just a little strange. And then she does the jump, and Vienna's like, "Oh, she can teleport. That's great. Like, I want to be her friend."
And then she said, "I wish I was that girl."
I'm like, "Oh my god, okay." I mean, that's a good way to look at it. So I'm glad she's not terrified and will be forever haunted by this. Maybe she will, and I don't know, but then when Rachel gets there, they don't show us Ethan's body, but we can imagine what his face looks like.
Is his name Ethan?
Noah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
How long have I been calling him Ethan?
You were calling him Noah before, and then you went to Ethan, but that's okay. I mean, just whatever general white guy name. Yes, they don't show it, and they hold off. They just show you her reaction, which is a great shot. And then we get to see his face later, and it's super creepy. And then you feel bad because you kind of liked him, even though he was a little bit of a doofus. So they set that up well, and then you're scared for her and Aiden, because it's like, how are they going to get out of this? But she figures it out.
Yes. Oh, a thing I read, he is from Australia and she's from New Zealand, or the other way around. And so they both had accents, but they were doing their American accents, and they did a good job.
They did. I mean, I don't know how people do it. I really don't. Like, I can't do an impression of anyone or, like, do a good accent or anything. I
do an accent right now.
Oh, God.
No, you don't have to.
Good day, mate.
That was bad. No, it's great. Like, people who can study phonetics in order to act and use accents, or to be spies, or whatever you do with that knowledge, like, good on you. Because, yeah, that's a talent.
Also, like, from my perspective, is like, how do people do American accents? Because American accents are so flat. Like, you know, like, to me, it would be, like, easier to do, like, you know, a British accent in my mind.
Yeah.
Because it seems more extreme, but maybe they think American accents are extreme. But to me, it's like they're so flat. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. So remind me, the last scene, how does this movie end?
So she realizes that the reason she didn't get killed is not because she found her body, but because she copied the tape. And Samara wants to get her sort of life story out there, which I guess we can't blame Samara for, but, you know, maybe it's not cool. And so she has Aiden copy a tape. And then we don't really know what happens to the tapes or anything. I mean, I guess there's The Ring too, but I remember being really disappointed of that movie.
Yeah, we were disappointed, and I don't even remember. I mean, I think I blocked it out. And then I did see Rings that came out a couple years ago. We were going to go see it in the theater, and then the reviews were so bad, we were like, you know, let's spend our money on something else. I don't know what we did, but it's now updated. You know, you can certainly view it online. So that ups the stakes because it can be shared so much more widely. But I mean, this original, you know, the original American remake, it is so high in my mind. It didn't need a sequel.
Yeah, I remember we just had high expectations because we liked The Ring so much that we didn't even say how we spent that night after The Ring. We literally we got in bed together because we couldn't be apart from each other because we were so scared. And that's when he made that. And I said, is that when you said, yeah. I was like, what is going to come through the door right now? Is that what I said?
Yeah. You're like, well, no, what is the scariest thing that could possibly come through the door right now? Like, you were trying to put it in perspective that nothing maybe bad was going to happen. And I'm like, John Malkovich from Nosferatu is going to fly through the door and like eat us or something.
Yeah. I always think about that. It was like, Kelly just thought of the worst case scenario. She went even above Samara.
Because John Malkovich as Nosferatu is like double bad. I mean, yeah, I said that right.
Yeah. Or
as Samara. He could be as Samara too, and that would be bad too.
Samara. Kelly is scared of John Malkovich, if you can't tell.
I don't know. I find him creepy. But yeah, and then I had like a porch with, you know, there's like two doors, and if one door wasn't shut all the way, the inner door would sound like someone was knocking on it. Do you remember that? Like, yeah. We were terrified.
We were so scared. I think at one point, like, we were trying to reason that the noise out there was like your dad coming over, or like Luke coming over or something. Like it's just a human, if there's anything out there. But like we thought Samara was gonna come, or John Malkovich. It was very scary, but we got ourselves worked up after that movie.
Oh, if you had gotten a voice message that said you will die in 7 days at that point, like what would you have done?
I mean, screamed. That's why I think one of the reasons I love horror movies so much. I love to see people deal with these situations, because I think I would just be a lump. Like, I just think I would, like, in situations where I've been really, really scared. Like, if you think of like moments in your life where like your stomach dropped, like I can think of one time I was like in a four-wheeling accident, and I was actually very motionless and silent. So sometimes I think that's maybe how I would react, is like I would just like not say anything and just like while my brain's like trying to process. How about you? How have you reacted when like you're like actually scared?
You know, I guess I've been calm and just tried to do something logical. And so how I imagine that I would react is not how I actually react. I imagine that I would like run away screaming or hide, but really I have been calm. I mean, I've not been in a situation where I've fallen in a well with a dead body though.
Yeah, I mean that's really pushing the limits of my silence, I'm sure.
Meg's just curled up silently in the well.
Like I just have big eyes like hello.
Oh God. It's so scary. Okay, is there anything else you want to say about The Ring before we rank it?
No, it's just really cool, and I hope people, if you haven't seen it, I hope you see it, and I hope too that you get the chance to see Ringu and other great, like The Grudge. What is the Grudge called in? I can't remember, but Ju-on. Yeah. Check those movies out, because there's just some awesome. I can't speak for every single Asian horror film, but there's some really good ones out there.
Another one I remember really liking was it The Eye, where that woman gets those eye transplants and like she sees the ghost like licking the glass of that restaurant.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God. They did a remake of it and it was fine, but I think the original in that case was better. Yeah, it's like licking oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And the ghost is like holding a dead baby.
Oh my God, yes. That movie was really good. And the original Dark Water that they made a remake again of was good too. I remember that too. So yeah, there's some really good ones.
Check them out. Okay, what are we using for our scale? It is our 100th episode, so should we use a 100 with 2 wells?
Yeah, 2 wells for double the smart. That's what they should do in the next sequel.
So on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being you hated it, 10 being it's a perfect movie, how many double wells do you give The Ring?
I am going to give it, I'm acting as though like I've never been asked to rank a movie before.
Do you want me to go first for the first time? I'm giving it a 10. I'm giving it 10 out of 10 because I was so pleasantly surprised by not only how well this movie held up into all my expectations and in my mind, but it actually surpassed a lot of things that I had never noticed before. 10 out of 10.
You know, I was oscillating between 9 and 10, and I think I'm going to say 10 too, because also just it's a 100th episode, come on. And but also, yeah, you're right, like a lot of movies that I have liked in the past, you'll kind of watch again and be like, oh, maybe that wasn't as good, but it was just as good, if not better than I was hoping. So it's all about expectation, and I was happy. So 10 out of 10.
Yay! Horror Rewind listeners, we want to thank you for listening, because we would not be here on our 100th episode if it wasn't for the listeners. So thank you so much. We want to hear from you what your favorite episodes have been or what you're hoping to hear in the future. So make sure to email us or tweet us or check in with us on social media.
Yeah, we want to hear from all of you. We love hearing from you. It's so fun. And we also get good ideas of movies that were important to you in your childhood and things like that, and remind us of ones we may have forgotten.
So until next time, Horror Rewind listeners, we will see you in the horror section.